Hi, this is Midnight Gardener with Growkind Television, and we're with Danko today, the Senior Cultivation Editor of High Times Magazine. Danny, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great. I just got a few questions for you. Some of our viewers at Growkind had some questions. First question is from a user named Ganja. He would like to know about what are your thoughts about CO2 enrichment with regards to organic soil growth?
Well, I think if you have an organic soil grow, you certainly can enrich your room with CO2, particularly if you don't have a lot of air circulation or if it's a closed room kind of system. If you do have a ton of air circulation and you're using a lot of, you're replenishing the air with fresh air a lot, it's not really necessary. And I do think that boosting your yield with CO2 really only boosts yield. It doesn't boost potency and it doesn't boost really anything else except yield. So, you know, if you want bigger buds that look really beautiful, that's wonderful. But I don't think CO2 enrichment is really necessary if you have enough airflow. So you can boost it up to 1,500 parts per million, and as long as everything else is working in conjunction, you know, as long as you're pulling out enough heat and your lighting and everything is optimal, then you will grow bigger yields. But I don't know if there'll be better yields.
Great, bigger yields are always good.
Yeah, it's always good to have more. But I don't want to leave people under the illusion that adding CO2 will somehow increase THC levels or anything like that. It really is just more photosynthesis, more plant matter.
So what would you say would be a percentage of increase with CO2 enrichment versus non-CO2 enrichment as far as bud size?
I think you can increase bud size about 30% ultimately when you enrich with CO2 properly. If you have it, you know, up to 1,500 parts per million during the whole light cycle at all times. If you keep it at that level, you'll boost about 30% of your yield.
Okay, the next question is regarding organic nutrients. Do you have any special organic nutrients you recommend?
Well, I love bat guano. I think that's a great nutrient. Anything involving seaweed, kelp, anything with beneficial bacteria is great. If I had to pick certain companies, I think Canna is great, Earth Juice is great, Organicare from Botanicare is a great organic alternative. Even General Hydroponics now has General Organics, which is their line, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Kyle Cushman's Veganic Tea, which takes organic to a whole different level. There's no slaughterhouse products, no bone meal or blood meal involved, and not even guanos, which is poop, basically. So it's really just seaweed and supplemental things like molasses, and a lot of emphasis on making your own compost tea and brewing it and oxygenating that and using that as a nutrient. You really get a tremendous amount of biological microbial activity in an aerated compost tea. You aerate it for 24 hours, and then you can foliar feed or drench the soil with that, and you really can't burn too much using it. It's just a wonderful all-around organic nutrient.
Great. What do you think about the hemp industry right now? Where do you think that's at?
That's interesting. I was actually a part of the hemp industry before even working for High Times. I worked for Head Case Hemp Hats, and we made hats in the 1990s for a bunch of different companies and bands and stuff. I think the hemp industry went through kind of an ups and downs around that time, around 1999, 2000. A lot of companies sort of fell by the wayside, and a few remain. Of course, there's Hoodlam and Hempworks over in Amsterdam, which is a great company. Hempist in Boston has always been solid. And I think that, you know, as long as we can start growing hemp domestically here in the U.S. and bring down the cost of production. Right now, we're paying Canadian farmers and Chinese farmers and processors to farm and process the hemp and then importing it into the United States. If we can produce it within our own borders, the price would be substantially cheaper, and we could actually compete against companies that make clothing out of cotton or you know, flax and all of those seeds, the benefits you can get from the hemp seed as well. So as far as the hemp industry these days, you know, there's great companies, but they're all kind of based outside of the U.S. as long as they're in the production world. Manitoba Hemp Company comes to mind, and Nativa. So a lot of companies you see in every health food store now. So that's great, but I do think we need to be able to grow it here in order to bring down the cost of production.
And is High Times currently involved in the anything to do with the legislation in Kentucky regarding hemp?
As far as Kentucky, I mean, High Times is involved in publicizing it. We're not really a nonprofit, and we're not really a lobbying arm. We just, we pay attention to what's going on, and we try to encourage people to get involved, but we're not directly involved in activist efforts, except maybe to sometimes we'll help fund things for NORML and local initiatives. But for the most part, we're just, we're kind of a propaganda arm. We want to inform as many people as to what's going on and get them involved on a local level. And as far as Kentucky goes, I mean, it's a natural place to grow hemp. It's where hemp was grown many years ago before it was prohibited. And, they're great at farming, and it's a very agricultural, wonderful place to produce that. So we encourage it, we try to get involved with it, and we want to encourage anyone that has any say in it or anyone who lives there to participate in making changes so we can grow hemp and so we can grow marijuana as well.
And then what are your thoughts on the medical marijuana industry here in California? Where do you think you'll see that in 5 years?
Well, we're hoping that soon we will move beyond medical. I think that medical marijuana here in California, they pioneered the way as far as if you're going to use the drug war metaphor. I think medical marijuana is the equivalent of getting the wounded off the battlefield. And that's not an original by me, that's Russ Belville, who I got that from. But once you've removed the wounded from the battlefield, the fight goes on for recreational use, for spiritual use, any kind of adult responsible use of marijuana is what we support. So medical got our foot into the door, and it's wonderful, and it's a great way for patients to get their medicine. But we also feel that the regular average cannabis consumer doesn't need a doctor's note to tell them that they can consume cannabis. We think that a responsible adult should be allowed to do that without having to visit a doctor to get permission. So that's the ultimate goal. I think that's the ultimate goal here as well. Like I said, medical is a step in the right direction, and then hopefully there's further steps. And I know in 2014 and in 2016 there's various initiatives here, the Jack Herer initiative in particular. We're hoping that passes and that we get recreational adult use of marijuana in California within the next couple of years, I hope.
Yeah, so do we all.
I mean, really what would be great is a change on a federal level, and that's what we're really hoping for in the near future if we can get it. It's a tough road, but we're trying very hard to achieve that.
Right. Okay, Danny, thank you much for your time. I won't take any more of it.
Thank you. Thanks to the people at Growkind, and thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and keep up the great work, teaching people to grow.
Bye-bye.